Hi, I'm Sam Flying Kai, and welcome to the horror show. It's week 31, and today we're doing The Exorcist 3. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. It came out in 1990. It's about an hour and 50 minutes long. It's rated R. It's directed by William Peter Blatty, who's the guy who wrote the original book that the original movie was based off of. And this movie, in fact, is, if I'm also not mistaken, based off a book that he wrote called Legion, in which he wanted the movie to be called Legion, but the studio was like, there's gotta be, an exorcism scene at the end of the movie, so it's like, oh, fine, I guess I'll add an exorcism scene. Right. But, that. The music is composed by Barry D. Verzon. George C. Scott plays Lieutenant Kinderman. I don't know if he's lieutenant in this. Kinderman. He plays Kinderman. Yeah, lieutenant. Ed Flanders plays Father Dyer. Brad Douriff plays the Gemini Killer. Jason Miller plays Patient X. And Nicole Williamson plays Father Morning. And Scott Wilson plays Dr. Temple. Now, just kind of like before I talk about the movie, talk about the cast of it. George C. Scott's a huge guy in the 70s, 80s, 90s, although I guess mostly in the 80s and 90s is what people would, mostly remember him from. Like, the biggest thing that I can think about that people would know him from, like, that would be the Christmas Carol, or one of those Christmas Carol movies he did where he played Scrooge, in which, to be fair, it's my favorite Christmas Carol movie. The music is great, and just, him, he's a great actor. One lovely, wonderful actor. So, anything he does, it's gonna be great, like, actual great stuff. Not like, it's so great, it's not like, it's so funny, it's great, it's like, actually great, like, he's a really good actor, and the only reason you would think it's funny, if he said something or whatever, is if you're a horrible person inside, because you think, oh, that's so funny because, take it out of context. It's so funny. No, but anyway. Brad Dourif, the guy who plays Gemini Killer, he's Chucky. I think. I'm pretty sure. But he's also in Lord of the Rings. He plays... Wow, I forget his name. He's in the Two Towers. He's the guy in Rohan, who is, whispering to the king. He's wearing all black, really pale, and then, at the end of the movie, he's with Saruman in the Tower of Isengard. That guy, he's that guy. And Scott Wilson, he is in The Walking Dead, or at least a little bit of it. He plays Yes, he plays Herschel. So, it's cool. And this movie came out in 1990, so you see all these huge faces. You would like to think it's a huge movie. IMDb would say this movie is a 6.5 out of 10. How about 41,000 people rated it? I would say very otherwise. Not like very otherwise, like it's, it's like a 1 or 2 out of 5. Very good, very wonderful movie, I think, and let's kind of dive into it. Alright, I think the story is a 5 out of 5. Just a brief sum up of it. A police lieutenant uncovers more than he bargained for as his investigation of a series of murders which have all the hallmarks of the deceased Gemini serial killer leads him to question the patients of a psychiatric ward. This movie is very fascinating because you could probably guess where the movie's going, but if you close your mind to the possibilities and just watch, without guessing what's gonna happen, movies like this are so great and so wonderful. But if you guess and then you end up getting it right, then it's like, oh yeah, I got it right, cool. But I don't know. So it starts off with the investigations and the murders, and then it kind of leads into the psychiatric ward, which is mostly just this piece of this hospital. And it's funny how you kind of get there, in which I'll kind of get more into it when I start getting into the characters, but the story and all the twists and turns that this movie kind of goes through one could go and see it and be like, that's really silly and kind of stupid. And I could totally get why they would go and think that. I personally think it's great stuff, and I guess let's just say this. I think a way of kind of putting it is that the ending for the first Exorcist is, like, you can't replicate that. It's really huge, and I would say very powerful. This movie does two things. It makes that ending kind of pointless, but then it kind of makes up for it in the very ending. I think, anyway. So, alright, now let's get to the characters. I think the characters are a 5 out of 5. Also very good, like in the first one, where you see a lot of humanity in all the characters. You see the humor and the sadness that our characters go through. So, for example, you follow Kinderman the entire time. He's played by George C. Scott, of course. And he has this friendship with Father Dyer, and they're, good buds and whatnot. And it goes back, the whole relationship between the two of them goes back, 15 years, when the first Exorcist happened. I don't remember if they were buddies during that movie, but because of the events of that movie, they end up being buds. And, well, I guess kind of going back a bit to the story, this movie is supposed to take place 15 years later, and the movie starts off on the anniversary of the ending, like what happened that night 15 years ago kind of thing. I have a dream. I'm going to say the quote. I have a dream of a rose and then like a long flight of stairs. That's like the very beginning. It's a bit, different how, he goes and says it. It's like, Father Dyer ends up, having to go to the hospital, and it's not like nothing crazy or bad or anything, but see, I'm not sure if I want to go and spoil this movie, because this movie is just really good. It really is. At least in my opinion it is. And how, like, if I were to go and start explaining it, you would either see more of, like, the passion of, like, oh, he thinks it's really good, so that must mean it's good, or at least, an opinion or two. But, let's just say that Kinderman goes through a lot of things in this movie, and is probably one of the strongest-willed characters you probably will ever see in a movie. Because if someone, like if I were going through what he was going through, I don't know if I would make it to the end. Not that I would go and, end it all, but, like, I would break down, and I would probably just stop, investigating. But he's a police guy, and, he's a very strong-willed guy in this movie. And so when, bad things happen, and he loses people he loves, or, good friends of his, then, and he's still, super strong and whatnot, and every now and again might, kind of break, but, like, throughout the entire movie, he's effectively 99%, like, very strong emotionally, and it's pretty cool. Yeah, quite the role model, I say. But, anyway, I would say the music's a 4.5. It's really good stuff. But I guess the only thing about it is that it's all fitting for what's happening in the movie. It's not like, there's a kind of theme, I say, that's like, the soundtrack is really good, but, like, is there any pieces of it that I would go and listen to later on to try to give me ideas? That's kind of my bias, I guess. And there's not, but I would still say that the soundtrack is really good and really fitting to what happens. I would say the setting's a 4.5 out of 5, mostly being, it's still the same place that the first one takes place in, but 15 years later. But I would say you see more of, like, more of, like, surroundings and the people, and of course you have the hospital and etc. that's there. The atmosphere and effects, I would say, is a 5 out of 5. Because there's a lot of really good scenes and whatnot in this movie. And it's all of it coming together. It really is good stuff. And I think if I'm trying to find a great way of saying this. There's a lot of really great memorable moments in this movie. In fact, there's something I think I've said before, that being, if there's a scene that feels like it could be right in a comic book, or that it was taken right out of a comic book, that scene is just 10 out of 10 kind of thing. There's a scene in this movie near the ending that is like that. It's not long, it's like 10 seconds. But I love it so much. Every time I watch this movie, I wait for that scene to happen. Because kind of like the build-up and whatnot to that scene, I love it so much. And it's like, when you go and think, like, okay, you open up your mind, it's probably silly-ish. And it obviously, because the director didn't want that. But I don't know, man. If I keep my mind in the movie, what I'm seeing, I love it so much every single time. And I think that's kind of how it is with a lot of movies. If you're like closed-minded a bit and just watching what you're seeing, you probably would enjoy a lot more movies, because you're experiencing, it's kind of like experiencing something for the first time again. If you don't go and guess, or if you don't know what happens later on. Although it's funny, I've only done this a couple of times, like with a movie. So like, watching this movie, it's like I don't go and just forget what happened, but I pretend that I don't know what's gonna happen. And so I kind of put myself back in the shoes of, I've never seen this movie before, even though I have. So all that to say, I think that the movie is a 4.8 out of 5. I think this movie is a very good movie and a very good sequel to the first one. And it makes a lot of sense that it's good, because it's William Peter Blatty, who basically wrote the screenplay and the original book for The Exorcist. So 1s out of 10s, 5 out of 10s, 10 out of 10s on IMDb. 1 out of 10, wow, what a massive piece of junk. Laughed all the way through. Dull and weak. Not great. 5 out of 10, the theatrical cut. What a convoluted mess. Mixed feeling. Improvement, but very slow. And 10 out of 10, a brainy horror movie, not for everyone. The Exorcist 3, the most underrated horror movie of all time. Underrated gem. And I am more in the camp of the 10 out of 10s. But the 5 out of 10s kind of make a lot of sense too. Because, see, theatrical cut. I love that movie. But that ultimately isn't really what the director wanted. And so there is a director's cut out there, but the quality and the graininess of the footage is just, a lot of it's not great. It's really bad. It's really, because it never was like remastered or whatever. So the footage isn't really the best thing ever. But it's still interesting watching what he wanted. And yeah, I still prefer the theatrical, mostly because of the ending. There's different endings, but or kind of different endings, but I like the ending for the theatrical version. But yeah, definitely a brainy movie, because what's the moral or the theme, right? It's kind of faith again, although it's more well, the first one I would say was like about faith. This one's a lot more than just faith. It's a lot more other kind of small things that no one really talks about. Like, I guess for an example, there's a scene in this movie, well, there's technically two scenes that kind of, intertwine a bit. One's a dream sequence that Kinderman has, and the other one's something a patient in the psychiatric ward says. And they, collab a bit. And that's the idea that, what if old people aren't going crazy? What if they actually see something? Kind of similar to the idea that, like, babies can see, or, like, toddlers can see spirits, if you believe those things or whatnot. Because they're innocent or they're young and whatnot. And the reason for older people would be probably because they're nearing the end, right? But it's always interesting kind of like thinking about small things like those, and like, spreading those ideas, or just, yeah. But, anyway, or expounding on those ideas, not like spreading the ideas. Anyways, yeah. So I'm Sam, Flying Kite. This was week 31 of the horror show. I did The Exorcist 3, and I really love this movie. Is this a top 5 horror movie for me? It might be. Although, like, I've kind of thought about it, but each time I did, then I would go and be like, what about this movie? What about that movie? So it's a bit difficult for me. Of all time, probably not. But, like, if I were to make, like, a top 250, like, best movies of all time, it's obviously in the list. It's probably top 50, honestly. But, it is difficult because there's a lot of really good movies out there, and this is definitely up there for a movie that can be there, at least in my opinion. But yeah, I will see y'all next week for the new franchise that I'm gonna do. 1, it's gonna be a lot of fun doing it, but then 2, right now in life it's a bit busy, and so I'm like, how am I gonna like do this? I'm gonna do it. I'm still gonna do it. It's just getting to that point, and you know. Oh boy, but it's gonna be fun. I'll see y'all next week. Goodbye.